I sit alone in my tiny New York apartment, the winter wind rattling the windows. On the table in front of me lies a pile of yellowed envelopes, each word soaked in memory, regret, and a quiet hope I can't explain. I'm writing to a soldier who will never read these letters. A man I never met, but somehow, through the chaos of war, our fates became bound. Do you think you could pour your heart out knowing no one will ever hear it? Would you keep writing or let silence win? The smell of ink mixes with the cold air. Outside, the city hums, but inside I am still at war. The battlefield never really leaves you. It clings to your mind like smoke even decades later. I remember the mud, the shivering nights, the screams that never reached the surface. The letters began as a way to keep myself sane, a whisper of humanity in a place where humanity died. Can you imagine carrying words that no one will ever receive? Each sentence was a small act of defiance against the emptiness inside me. Even now, years later, those ghosts still breathe through the ink. Rain slams against the windows as I hold one of the letters in trembling hands. The city outside doesn't care, people rushing, taxis honking, life going on. But inside me, time stands still. I think about the soldier, somewhere far away, never knowing these words exist. Would you still write if you knew it would all vanish into nothing? I press the paper to my chest before folding it, as if somehow my heart can reach his. I finally walk to the mailbox. My steps are heavy, my breath visible in the cold air. I know he will never read it, but sending the letter feels like breathing for the first time in years. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe it's healing. What would you do? Hold on to the pain or let it go, even if no one is listening? As the envelope disappears into the slot, I feel something loosen inside me, something I thought was gone forever. Days pass. Weeks. My apartment feels emptier, the silence thicker. I wander through New York's gray streets, past old brick buildings and cafes filled with laughter. I envy them, those who live untouched by war. Each face I see reminds me of someone lost. The soldier I write to has become the symbol of everything I couldn't save. Can you live with that kind of silence? I keep writing because not writing feels like dying. Tonight, the ink stains my fingers as I write again. I confess things I've never spoken aloud: fear, guilt, survival. Sometimes I think the letters aren't for him at all, but for me. They're a mirror showing who I was and who I've become. Would you dare to face yourself that honestly, knowing no one will ever answer? The truth hurts, but so does silence. Walking through the old neighborhoods, I see time etched into every wall: cracked bricks, faded posters, faces and photographs of men who never came home. The soldier in my letters isn't one man anymore, he's all of them. Every name carved into a stone monument. Do you believe words matter even if they're never read? I keep writing because remembering feels like rebellion against forgetting. Sometimes doubt creeps in. I ask myself why I continue. Why send words into the void? Maybe it's madness. Or maybe it's faith. The faith that even unseen, our stories have meaning. Would you keep going when hope is gone? Outside, snow begins to fall, each flake landing softly, briefly, like a memory that refuses to melt away. Late at night, I read through the letters I've written. My own handwriting feels foreign now. These words, my words, tell the story of a man trying to make peace with the past. Maybe the soldier never needed to read them. Maybe I just needed to write them. Would that be enough for you? To speak even when no one listens. I look at the stack of letters on my table. They've grown thick, heavy with time. I realize now that the purpose was never to be answered. It was to survive. Every line, every confession, was a lifeline thrown into darkness. Would you keep writing if no one ever wrote back? I think you would. Because some stories are too heavy to carry in silence. And even if the soldier never reads these letters, I finally have. The winter fades, but the chill inside me stays. I wake up each morning to the same silence, the same letters stacked neatly beside the coffee cup I never finish. Sometimes I imagine the soldier's face, not clearly, just a blur of features shaped by memory and guilt. Could you love someone you've never met, someone who exists only through the echoes of war? Maybe love isn't always about knowing someone. Maybe it's about needing to believe that someone out there understands your pain. The postman recognizes me now. He nods when I hand him the envelopes but never asks questions. Maybe he knows better than to disturb a man living inside his own ghost. Each time I send a letter, it feels like releasing a part of my soul into the unknown. Have you ever wanted to confess everything to someone you'll never meet? I think that's why I keep doing it. It's easier to talk to a stranger than to those who think they already know you. One night I can't sleep. I walk down to the river. The water reflects the city lights, rippling like the fragments of my past. I think of the battlefield, the smell of smoke, the screams swallowed by gunfire, the feeling of being both alive and dead at once. If you had survived something like that, would you still believe in peace? My letters are my only truce, the fragile line between remembering and madness. I meet a woman at a small bookstore downtown. Her name is Evelyn. She sells secondhand novels, all smelling faintly of dust and nostalgia. She asks about the envelopes I always carry. I tell her they're for someone who can't receive them. She doesn't laugh, doesn't pity me. She just nods. Have you ever met someone who sees your pain without needing to ask? For the first time, I don't feel invisible. Evelyn becomes my unexpected solace. We talk about everything, books, loss, silence. But I never tell her about the war or the letters. Some wounds are too deep to share. Would you trust someone with your darkest memories, or keep them hidden where they can't hurt anyone else? I tell myself I'm protecting her from my past, but maybe I'm just protecting myself from feeling again. Weeks pass. Evelyn begins to notice the shadows behind my smile. She asks who I write to. I finally tell her, a soldier who will never read my words. Her eyes don't widen, her voice doesn't tremble. She just says softly, maybe he was meant to hear them even if he never could. Do you believe in that words can reach beyond life itself? For the first time, I wonder if my letters were never meant to be delivered by hand. That night, I dream of the soldier. He's standing in the field, his uniform torn, his face calm. He doesn't speak, but I understand everything. In the dream, I hand him the last letter and he smiles. When I wake, my hands are shaking, my eyes wet. Was it just a dream or something more? Have you ever felt like someone lost was suddenly right beside you? I stop writing for a few days. The apartment feels different, heavier, quieter. Maybe the letters served their purpose. Maybe the soldier finally found peace and so did I. But silence creeps back, that familiar ache that never truly leaves. Could you let go completely, or would you need to hold on to something, even a ghost, just to feel alive? Evelyn visits. She finds the letters stacked neatly, tied with a red ribbon. She reads the first few lines before I can stop her. Her eyes fill with tears and she whispers, "You were never writing to a soldier, Henry. You were writing to yourself." The truth hits like a shell exploding nearby, sudden, deafening, undeniable. How long had I been trying to reach the man I once was? That night, I sit by the window and read the last letter aloud. My voice trembles, but for the first time it doesn't break. I say goodbye, not to the soldier but to the part of me that never left the battlefield. If you're still out there, I whisper, thank you for listening. Maybe we all write letters to people who will never read them, hoping to find ourselves between the lines. Tell me, have you ever written to the past? The morning light creeps through the blinds, soft and unfamiliar. I haven't slept, but for once the exhaustion feels gentle. The stack of letters sits quietly on the table, no longer a burden, but a monument. I think about burning them, setting them free in smoke and wind. Would you let go of your pain if it meant losing a part of yourself? I trace the edges of the envelopes, feeling the texture of every memory I've tried to forget. I walk to Central Park, letters in hand. The air smells of rain and earth. Children laugh in the distance, a sound I once thought I'd never bear again. I sit beneath an old oak tree and open one of the letters at random. My handwriting shakes, but the words still feel alive. I read them aloud to no one, and somehow it feels like enough. Have you ever spoken to ghosts just to remind yourself that you're still here? A gentle wind rises, scattering a few pages across the grass. I watch them float away, light as forgiveness. Maybe that's all these letters ever were, a way to forgive myself for surviving, for living when others didn't. Could you forgive yourself for something you couldn't control? For years I thought I didn't deserve peace. But maybe peace was never something you earn. Maybe it's something you choose. When I return home, Evelyn is waiting by the door. She doesn't say a word, she just smiles, holding 2 cups of coffee. It's strange how silence can mean different things. Once it was punishment. Now it feels like understanding. She tells me she's been reading some of my letters. They're beautiful, she says, because they're honest. Honesty, I realize, is the first step toward healing. I begin to write again, but this time not to the soldier. I write to the living, to the world I had forgotten how to love. I write about the small things, the smell of rain, the sound of footsteps on pavement, the way light hits the Hudson at dusk. Have you ever rediscovered beauty in something ordinary? It's terrifying at first, but also freeing. Weeks pass, and the letters to the soldier remain untouched. I don't destroy them. I can't. They belong to another version of me, a man who needed to speak even if no one would answer. Maybe you have a part of yourself like that too. One that still writes letters to the past. I leave them in a wooden box, tied with the same red ribbon Evelyn found. One evening, I take Evelyn to the memorial wall downtown. Names stretch across the stone like an ocean of memory. I place one of my letters beneath a single name, a name I don't recognize, yet somehow feels familiar. For all the ones who never came home, I whisper. She squeezes my hand, and for the first time in years I don't feel alone. Months later, I receive a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside is one of my own letters, the handwriting faded by time. There's only a short note attached. He would have understood. I don't know who sent it, and maybe I don't need to. Would you search for meaning or accept that some things simply are? I fold the letter carefully and place it back in the box. Life continues quietly. I still write, still remember. But the words no longer hurt, they heal. Writing taught me that pain doesn't disappear, it transforms. It becomes a story, a lesson, a bridge between who we were and who we are. Maybe that's all we ever hope for, that someone someday will understand what we couldn't say out loud. I stand by the window one last time, the city lights glowing beneath the night sky. The box of letters rests on the table, untouched but alive. I whisper into the darkness, "Thank you." The words drift into the quiet, and I feel something shift inside, light, almost weightless. Perhaps the soldier never needed to read them after all. Maybe he was always listening.